I'll now call to order the special meeting of March 25th, 2019. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to move on to new business right now. We have resolve authorizing the city manager to provide the Lewiston-Auburn Transit Committee with a 0% interest rate loan not to exceed $187,500 from the city's general fund. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Gary and a second from Councilor Walker. I'm going to open this up to the public for public comment. Is there anybody from the public that would like to be here? And just so you know, the director of LATC can't be here tonight, but we do have the vice chair, which is the city manager, here to answer any questions. Nobody from the public? Okay, I'm going to bring this back down to the council. Council, is there any comment or debate on this topic? None being? Okay. Let's do a vote by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? None being? Motion carries 6-0. It's been 45 seconds. I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, you can't make a motion. I make a motion that we adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Titus, a motion from Councilor Walker. All those in favor by voice vote, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? None being? We stand adjourned. Because of that, we went over about 15 seconds from our world record.
Now we got to go back.
Leroy got a good chuckle out of that. Okay. Welcome back. I'm now going to call to order the City Council workshop of March 25th, 2019. First item is the Auburn Water District's bond discussion with Mr. Sid Hazelton presenting. Mr. Hazelton, if you could just come here. And first of all, this is just to remind you all, we had this presentation during our last regular council meeting. This is not coming up to vote tonight, obviously, but next week there will be. Is there any questions from Mr. Hazelton at this point from the council? None being. Mr. Hazelton, if you could just give us a 30-second overview again, dollar amounts and the treatment. And
certainly. If you remember, last Monday I came to you and I outlined our plans for 2019. We are planning an alum treatment to the lake. It's going to happen sometime late this summer, early fall. That is designed to strip the phosphorus from the water column, also bind up any phosphorus that's present in the sediments of Lake Auburn. In order to fund this project, we have been speaking with the City of Lewiston. The total project estimate is $800,000. We are splitting that project in half. Lewiston will pay half, Auburn Water District half. In our portion of that expense, we are looking to take out a state revolving loan bond, and every bond that we take out requires, in accordance with our charter, City Council approval. So that's what we're here to request, is authorization from the City Council to approve the bond for this project.
Very good. And just so for clarification, the bond will be repaid by the ratepayers.
That is correct. Auburn Water District, right.
Very good. Is there any
Real quick, Sid, could you just let us know when it will start and about how long it'll take to do the treatment?
We're planning to do it sometime after the June time period. We're not exactly sure of the time frame because we still need to monitor the lake. We want to do this application at the ultimate time. We want to, if the lake trends very well, there's a chance we might not do it at all. But we will be monitoring the lake as the summer goes on, and that's going to be our, there's going to be a short window to do it, and when we do, it's going to happen for a 3-week period.
So you say there is an opportunity that it may not have to happen?
potentially.
Is there any other questions from the council? Councilor Fournier.
Just two. One, I think previously you did treat the water within the anticipation of having to do this if you had to do that. Is that a two-phase situation?
It is. Back in 2012, we had a lake quality issue, which I had reviewed with you. At that time, we did apply to the state to get a permit to apply an algicide. Would it be needed in the future? And from those discussions, we knew that if we did apply an algicide, the following year we would be following up with an alum treatment. So we got that permit back in 2012. We didn't need to use that algicide until this last fall. So it's really just the plan that we have always had is to follow up with an alum treatment. So that's what we're planning to do.
Follow-up question. We talked about it at the last meeting again when you mentioned 50%, 50%. We know that Lewiston is not 50%. It's way beyond that. At what point in time, when we do business with Lewiston, do we turn to the rate usage?
We currently do, based upon allocation of water, things like chemical usage. As you know, we do have a joint treatment plant. Lewiston does use approximately 60% of the water, Auburn about 40%.
Right.
When it comes to operational things like chemicals, electricity, those things are apportioned based upon flow. In the past, we have viewed most capital projects. We have split those, and we do have interlocal agreements for, we got several of them when we do things like this. This project, we considered it to be a capital expenditure. It's going to be it's not an ongoing thing, it's a one-time shot, so we have agreed to split this one down the middle. As we have other capital projects. When we built the UV plant, that was half paid for by Auburn, half by Auburn Water District, half Lewiston.
So it's reasonable to understand that the cumulative effect down the road will be that Auburn has paid the lion's share, if we're always doing 50-50.
A disproportionate amount?
A disproportionate amount.
Well, and again, it depends on, again, it's a project-by-project basis. Historically, we've done capital projects 50-50, but we do have agreements in place that we develop as we do different projects. This one, we were looking at 50-50.
It might be a good idea to kind of lay that out so we can see what's occurred, so we can see what our expenditures have been and what Lewiston's expenditures have been, and take a look at how equitable is that, because...
Yeah,
Councilor Fournier, I will give you a little update. The water trustees did speak of that at the last meeting.
They did.
And we talked about this particular situation because it was a
planting
gray
a
area,
seed.
whether it's a capital or it was maintenance. And
Right.
the agreement was, in this case, to go with the 50%.
Right.
But we did also ask Sid in the future to make sure that we're really looking at, if it is an operational expense, it is proportionate. And then we are going to look into the actual interlocal agreement
Right.
as in terms of everything else down the road. So it is something that will be looked at and has been mentioned at the trustees' meetings.
Thank you, Councilor
Yes.
Titus. It was just a planting a seed and a reminder. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? None being, Mr. Hazel, thank you very much for
Great,
this.
thank you.
Okay. If there's anything else that pops up, we'll let you know. But this is scheduled for a vote next week. Next, City Manager, preliminary budget presentation for fiscal year 20. I'll turn it over to Manager Creighton at this time. Time flies. Yeah, just like our unfunded bond. Sit on it.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. It's my privilege to present to you the preliminary draft budget at this point in time as of March 25th, 2019. As I've done the last couple of years, this is a 30,000-foot overview on the budget at this point in time. There's been a lot of work put into this budget already. I want to acknowledge the work that the Finance Director, Jill Eastman, has done. Jill has been terrific with the support she's provided helping prepare this budget. She's done a tremendous amount of work. Also want to acknowledge the work that Assistant City Manager Phil Kroll has done, and also the Human Resources Director, Chris Muma. The three of them are my budget team, and then all the department directors and their teams have been very engaged and have done a great job too. I asked them to give me the request that reflected the needs that they have for their organizations, and that's what they've done. I also want to mention that the CPIU is 2.4, so keep that in mind as we go through this process. In terms of city expenses, we are looking at, and that comes from the U.S. Department of Labor Standards. The operating expenses increase is 1.05 for the municipal government. The debt service is 6.48%. The biggest change in the debt service, I would say, is I'm recommending a transfer on the debt in the arena to the general fund debt service, so we can look at the operation of the arena separate from the debt service. We won't lose track of what that debt service is. I can tell you from my experience in Cumberland County, where I was a county manager for almost 20 years, when we looked at the Cumberland County Civic Center, we looked at it separate from the debt service so we could see whether the operation was actually sustaining itself and being successful. Intergovernmental, that has to do with joint agencies that we fund, like LA Transit, for example, and the other agencies such as the airport. So total city expenses increase is 2.68% when you add those three together. In terms of the department proposed budget, operating expenses are at this point at $31,718,617. Debt service is $10,134,493. The intergovernmental is at $4,278,480. The biggest cost there is Androscoggin County government, which is over $2 million by itself. So the total proposed expenses at this point in time are $46,131,590. In terms of the operating expenses, as I've just reviewed with you, we are at $1,191,514 more than FY 18-19, or 2.68% more. This slide's a little hard to read, probably. Hopefully you can read it in terms of the total expenses. If you start with the council's adopted budget at the top of the screen on the left-hand side, in that first column, you're looking at total combined city and school department budget of $88,184,080. The request that came in from the departments was $91,894,423. And what I'm recommending at this point is $91,444,644 for a change or an increase of $3.2 million, $3,260,564, or 3.7%. If you go down to the next row, you'll see the city non-tax revenues have increased by $280,856, or 1.76%. 200,000 of that $280,856 is 50% of the increase that Governor Mills has put in her budget for municipal revenue sharing, not the whole amount. What she has recommended would be an increase of $400,000 in municipal revenue sharing for the city of Auburn. I am recommending at this point 50% of that. I've been to the legislature recently testifying on revenue sharing. I'll be back again this week on the local option sales tax. I think it's reasonable to think that the governor will be successful with the municipal revenue sharing increase that she's proposed, but I think the smart thing to do is to budget for a 50% increase. And I'll show you what it would look like if we get 100% before I finish the presentation.
City Manager, I'm so sorry, if I can ask a quick
Yep,
clarification.
please do.
You mentioned an additional 400,000,
That's municipal revenue sharing.
additional
Governor
to-
Mills has recommended an increase in municipal revenue sharing for municipalities.
On top?
And our amount of funding would be 400,000. And what I put in the budget at this point is 200,000.
And
of
what are
that.
we currently getting?
Right now, we're getting 1.6 million in revenue sharing overall.
And that's
So this would
40%
put us
prior
at-
to,
Okay,
Governor Mills' additional.
Thank you.
What I'm recommending at this point would take 50% of what the governor's recommending for an increase from 1.6 million to 400 to $2 million, and I'm recommending that we budget for 1.8 million, only 50% of what she's put in her budget at this point in time. I think that's a smart thing to do right now because you never know what's going to happen at the legislature. But there is a lot of support for an increase in municipal revenue share, I can tell you that.
So if I could, just to summarize this, we'll let you move on, Mr. Manager. In theory, we could pass the budget as is, where is, and then before the levy is set, get notification that we're going to receive an additional $200,000 in funding. At that point, that additional money would go to reduce the levy, correct?
Yes, and I'll show you what that will look like
Okay, very good.
before I finish the presentation. In terms of the school department, the superintendent will speak about this at some point, but there's an increase in the school subsidy of almost 1.6 million, $1,585,083. So the total non-tax revenues increase is $1,865,939. Then if you go down to the next category on the tax levy, and you look at that first row, and you go across, you'll see where we are right now, $26,099,008. And what I am recommending at this point for this draft is $26,934,711, or an increase of $835,703, or 3.2%. With the school department, right now the school department is at $17,997,261 for the local share. What Katie's recommending is $18,206,945, an increase of $209,684. Again, that's the local share. And then you can see the county's amount there. They have already approved their budget, and there's an increase of $74,955. And if you continue down to the tax rate for the city and you go across, the city's at 3.20%, or 43 cents on the mill rate. School department 1.17%, or 11 cents on the mill rate, and the county's at 4 cents at 3.11%, for a total of 2.41% on the tax levy. Keeping in mind the CPIU is 2.4. Any questions at this point? I will, as we go along in the budget process over the next few weeks, obviously get into more detail. Again, this is just a summary of the previous page. If you look at the tax levy, we're at 3.2%, school department 1.17%, the county 3.11%, for an overall increase of 2.41% with this draft, or $1,120,342. This next slide shows what the homeowner impact would be with this draft budget if it were approved for people living in the home valued at $150,000 with a city budget. You're talking about an increase of $63. For the county taxes, $6 increase. School budget, $16.50, for a total of $85.50, again, for someone in a home valued at $150,000. And then for $200,000 home, for the city budget, the impact would be $84, county taxes $8, the school budget $22, for a total impact of $114. In terms of capital needs, we've had many more requests than what we're capable of funding. The numbers that you're looking at here are a reflection of what I have recommended, which you'll hear at the meeting next Monday when I do part one of my proposed capital improvement needs, and then part two the following week on April 8th. The Auburn Lewiston Airport's at $630,500. City Clerk's Office, $20,000. Economic Community Development, $1,229,000. Facilities, $508,000. Fire and EMS, $265,000. LATC, $50,000. 911, $2,892,500. Museum LA, $30,000. Police, $287,800. Public Works, $3,381,000. And Recreation and Sports Facilities, $465,000. And then Education, $700,000. For a total of $10,522,500. Not all of this would be bonded. Portion of it, and again, you'll hear me speak about this next week and the following Monday, portion of it will be bonded, and then there'll be funding also through unallocated and also operating expenses where it's appropriate. Here is a slide that shows if we get the additional $200,000 from Governor Mills' increase in municipal revenue sharing. So recognizing the full increase of $400,000, the tax levy would be at 1.98% overall. And the city side, it would be 2.44%, the school 1.17%, the county 3.11%, again for a total overall tax levy of 1.98% on the increase. That's if we received all of the $400,000 increase that the governor has put in her budget for municipal revenue sharing, which right now we're getting $1.6 million. This will put us at $2 million. And that's a work in progress. The legislature is hearing from municipal officials and others across the state about the need to restore full funding, which for us would be $2.4 million, not $400,000, but $2.4 million. So that's still being discussed in the legislature. And we don't know what will happen. We won't know until probably the end of June what's going to happen regarding that. Any questions at this point?
Let's, I'd like to hold off on questions for just a moment. I'd just like you to go through your timeline very quickly. That way, some of the questions might be answered through the timeline. Then we'll come right back.
You want to go to the tentative timeline schedule?
Yeah, please.
Brian, if you could put that up on the screen, that would be great.
That way we can kind of think about how we're going to talk about it, questions we ask. Yeah, no, I think we don't do it.
There we go. Thank you. So in terms of the timeline, this is what we're looking at tentatively, and a question that I have for all of you is how you would like to see the budget workshops handled. Last year, the previous year, we had department head presentations. Do you want to do that again, or would you prefer to have department heads present to be able to ask questions? And I would encourage you to submit questions ahead of time. Once we send you the proposed budget and give you an opportunity to be able to review it, if you could submit questions to me so that I could share those, Phil and I could share those with the department directors so they could be prepared to answer the questions ahead of time, in some cases even provide written answers. I think that would be helpful. I am looking for some direction from you. Do you want department head presentations, or would you prefer that we come in and answer questions?
I'm gonna take this down. We'll go through, and when you're finished, then we'll have that conversation on what we kind of like to see as a council. So
you can see over the next two meetings, next week, April 1st, there'll be a CIP discussion, what I call part one. I'll go through part of the CIP, and we will have the department directors present to be able to answer any questions that I'm not able to. And then April 8th, we'll have part two of the CIP discussion on the proposed CIP. I will give the proposed budget presentation at that point, any changes that have been made regarding the presentation I'm making tonight. The budget workshop with the departments will be April 16th. Again, looking for direction from you on how you'd like to approach that. Then the next budget workshop would be April 22nd, followed by a budget workshop on April 29th, where the joint agencies will be present. Then on the 29th, we have the council consideration on the approval of the new high school referendum question and setting the date for the election. Final date to submit the budget, we are well ahead of that. And then you have the an open date in terms of May 6th. And you have the adoption of the school budget on May 13th. And the adoption of the CIP plan on May 20th. Then a public hearing and first reading on the appropriation resolve and the CIP bonding June 3rd. And then June 11th, of course, the school budget election. June 17th, the second reading on the appropriation resolve and the CIP bonding. And we should be in good shape at that point.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Was there anything else you wanted to add on that topic, or?
No, that's it. I'm looking for feedback from
Will do.
all of you.
Okay, so let's just take this one at a time. Let's just go with the feedback and obviously the comment on the schedule. How's the schedule look to everybody? I mean, it does seem like, obviously, barring any unforeseen variables to pop up here during this process, we have a little bit more time. I will say, from my perspective, I enjoyed having department heads give us a full briefing. I'll also say that I think that that is probably unwarranted going forward, at least on the second budget of the city council, the sitting council. Sitting city council, I should say. And we might want to, again, up for discussion, but I'd be in favor of making them abridged abbreviations just to talk about anything new and justification on increase in expenses versus the entire description of their department. But
I wouldn't think we'd want to go line by line, but definitely have them get up and do a presentation and give us a chance to make comments and questions and concerns and also make possible suggestions.
so we're getting a kind of a presentation talking about the kind of the we'll call it the high points or the deltas of their budget, whether it be an addition or decrease, increase in revenue, increase in expense, so forth. So
I do appreciate the city manager asking that we submit questions ahead of time if possible, just to expedite it.
it's proper. It gives people time to head up. So if we go presentations, call it 5 to 10 minutes max per department, just on the major deltas in their operating budgets and CIP.
But I think we should spread them out, so I don't want to see one night where you've got 5 departments presenting in
would
one
like to
night, and we have to get it all done in
I
one night. I think
definitely
we've got
want
to
to
spread it out.
I want to
We have
spread them out.
other things that we can be putting into those particular evenings, not just budget items, so we
Right,
can
five-
spread it out that way.
5 to 10 minutes is not a whole lot of time.
Well, then we have QA afterwards, though.
That's what I mean, but if you have
Well, we got
5
10
or 6
We
departments
have
presenting
10
in one night, you don't
budget
have any time
workshops,
to.
so
Okay.
I really think that would be overboard.
Total departments, Mr. Manager, for the city?
13.
13?
So one per budget workshop and maybe couple of them. I don't want to rush anybody. I know that as we go along, we take a look at the presentation, then the questions come, and the questioning is what's going to take time.
Plus an empty, but that's full.
And sometimes it is line by line. If there's something, certain lines that we want to question, I think we should be able to do that.
How about if we did, just throwing this out there, how about if we did on starting, because we have CIP discussion starting on the 8th. CIP and CIP, that's going to cover a lot of it because we're looking at the line items. Starting on 4/16, budget workshop, we have a hard stop at 7 for a meeting. How about if we start off with 2 departments then? Question, nods?
Probably save the heavy-duty ones for by themselves.
I don't think we have enough time for a sole workshop with one department, but maybe, I mean, you're looking at 2 departments, 45 minutes each roughly. We also have a makeup day, so to speak, on May 6th. Well, final dates, no, we have to do it beforehand. Well, 4:30. So if we did 2 then, and then followed by 4 on Monday, the 22nd, or 5, that's still not enough.
I can come back to you with a suggestion on how to approach it, now that I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, because it looks like well, on the 30th, that's the final, you have to have a budget to us by the 30th. That's not our deadline. So we can still talk about it in May.
Yeah, I'm actually giving the budget presentation on April 8th. My proposed budget will be
We
April
can
8th.
still talk about it in May. That deadline, that final
So-
date for submission is the manager's final date to submit a
April
budget to
30th.
us.
Right, but we have till June 1st to approve.
Right, and I think we should take all that
Okay.
time.
No, okay, good. No, agreed. So if you think about a 5 to 10-minute presentation by the department head, not cram it. Let's do it to standard, not time. But let's try to keep some sort of schedule, plus a day for makeup like you have booked in, or another time.
Right.
Yes. I think mostly on the Q&A side now at this point. With questions, Councilor Zani, and to your point, Mr. Manager, submitted ahead of time. So it gives the department heads time to actually present and propose an answer, especially if math is involved. Is there any other comments, Councilor Zani?
Is it possible to get a hard copy of the CIP?
Yes, we'll do that.
If we could get it by
Yeah.
Friday, is that?
By this Friday?
Well, I want to, no, actually, before April 1st. So that's.
That's Friday.
This
Yeah,
Friday.
that's
Is that
Friday.
in our packet,
Yeah.
CIP?
And I guess we're going to have a budget book, so we're going to see all the departments in detail as well.
Yes, you will.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you haven't taken your old book and turned it into Jody yet, please do so she can recycle them.
Would it be wise to consider having a couple of additional, maybe Thursday night meetings?
We find the need, I have no problem with it if there's a need for it.
Especially up front, just so that if we want to work in department presentations.
I mean, we have some Monday, Tuesdays. If anything, just looking at the calendar here, I think the potential for a Thursday meeting would only exist the week of 4/8. So it'd be 4/11. Potentially 4/4. But that's, I mean, if we look at the potential for Thursday opens,
Maybe
early versus later.
perhaps we can see the city manager's suggestion in
Yeah.
terms of the schedule for hearing from the departments, and if it seems to work adequately within a Monday, Tuesday, if we can do it that way.
You know, and if we could compromise on this, let's say on April 22nd is our drop-dead day for decision-making process and additional meetings. If we are not on schedule and working towards a good solution by then I think at that point we can start clearing the deck and scheduling some additional meetings on this. Still giving, and that'd be on, I think we'll know at the end of the day on April 22nd if we're tracking.
I can tell you there's been a lot of work done on the budget. There are no new positions being requested. Departments did request some new positions because I asked them to request what they thought they needed. But given the situation this year, I felt that we could not add any new positions. The expenditure increase is a little more than 1%. So it's a good budget, I think, but I think it's important to have the discussions with you.
Okay, so to kind of wrap this one up, unless someone else, anybody have a
I know
comment on
that I'll
this one?
be absent Monday, the 29th. I guess I'd like to see a tentative date of Thursday, the 25th. It's just a tentative date.
Let's keep it open now, pre-plan, in case we need it. We'll make that call on the 22nd.
And can a calendar invitation be sent out for that date, please?
I don't know how to do that.
We can do that. Again, the date on that was
April 25th,
25th.
tentative 5:30 workshop, decision to be made on 4/22.
Okay.
Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is sort of on target, but not. How much money did we give Museum LA in this budget?
30,000.
30,000 in this budget.
And and you're going to be putting in another 30,000?
Well, I'll be talking about that next Monday, but there's a 2-year commitment that we made
And let's, just one second if we could, I just want to ask these questions, that's what we have the workshop for. I just want to wrap up and put a bow on schedule. So we're good. Any other recommendations? We got a 4/25 tentative meeting, date to be determined on 4/22, whether it's a go or not. We're talking about 5 to 10 minute proposals by department heads. Mr. Manager will give us a schedule, followed by Q&A and open dialogue with the council and the department heads and administration. Questions, if appropriate, and hopefully we urge everyone to do, is submit them to the city manager prior to the workshop.
How much time are you allowing for the Q&A?
Big fan of just getting it done and working the standard versus time. We do have to keep in some consideration, but we'll let the manager decide based upon his experience and obviously the weight of the budget and the department.
So would it make sense for the department heads to have a protocol for how they report out so that they can do the salient points within 5 to 10 minutes? Because that's a lot, that's a short amount of time.
I think it will be. I do think some departments are probably going to need more
Yeah, I know.
time
what I'm
than
saying.
that, some department directors. And we'll have to use some common sense with that, and as well as time for answers to questions that you may have. And when we put the schedule together for you to review, we'll take that into consideration.
Very good. Okay, let's move on now to kind of going backwards a little bit to the overall budget discussion based upon the manager's first portion of the workshop. I'm going to open this up to council to ask questions. Councilor Gary, you started off with a question on Museum LA under CIP. We're going to continue with that process and that question, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I still didn't think it was appropriate for it to be put in the budget the way it did when we got so many other priorities in the city and needs. And I thought the way it was going in this budget, they were going to get all the money up front. And so it surprised me to see it back in again for this time around.
Well, do you want me to answer that?
Please, please.
The request last year was for $60,000. The decision was to split it up over 2 fiscal years, $30,000 for this year and $30,000 for FY20. I think that was the understanding.
So what have we got for
What
the
it should be is
30,000?
philosophy at this point, not detail.
This is for their capital campaign to move the Museum LA to a new building, which I think you're familiar with. And they're working on that. They're working on raising money now in the community, the greater community of Lewiston, Auburn. And that's our commitment. I think the city of Lewiston's made a similar commitment. I'm not sure what the exact amount is.
Somehow I thought with their presentation, the money was to go for architectural fees to come up with the plans for the new building and to see if, and to do a feasibility study if that building was going to fit their needs.
I think they probably have used the funds for the architect work. We can, during the budget process, certainly have a representative come from Museum LA and speak about it under joint agencies, if you'd like to do that.
So in other words, Little Theater's kicking off their fundraising effort. If they come forward, you're going to be putting money into the budget to fund them and make a commitment for the city?
Not at this point in time. The budgets are already been developed in terms of the draft budget. Last year, they came before I presented the draft budget to the council and the mayor.
I'd like to change kind of tax just for a second. We'll get back to Q&A if we could. Just like to ask the council, I mean, what we're looking at right now, obviously with the increase in taxes, and it was very well laid out. Thank you, Mr. Manager. I mean, this is, by no means am I an expert on municipal and school budgeting. So far, this is a very easy to read and understand format, and I thank you for that. But council, question, we're looking at an increase, albeit potentially under CPIU. How are we feeling about that, just from a conceptual basis without going too much into the weeds at this time on school versus municipal, just looking at the overall increase, or even the warrants of such an increase? Start, Councilor Young, thoughts?
I just wanted to follow up a little bit on the Museum LA, if I could. Have the funds been actually transferred to them?
I believe they have been, yes.
There was something said in the discussion that we would get some kind of a report on, when they came to us the last time, they didn't really have any idea about how much it was going to cost to renovate that building or that type of plan. That made me feel kind of uneasy. But if they could come back and say, it's going to cost X amount, you know, as sponsors of that building, one of the sponsors and stakeholders, we'd like to know how big the hole is that we need to fill.
I think part of that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have Rachel DeGrosier come and answer any questions that the council may have and the mayor.
Yeah, I believe that one of the two, follow up, and then we'll get back to the question, of course, but they were supposed to be conducting a feasibility study, and I think a project estimation of costs and so forth over this past year. There's certain other things that were there. I'd like to look back at the minutes of the meeting, which I'll do, to see if there's any requirements. I don't think we made any promises on a second round or subsequent rounds of funding, other than it would look good if you're progressing well. We have to decide if they're progressing, I think, but I'd like to go back and double check that. But at the end of it, I think Mrs. Grosier should come back and talk to council. Okay. So Mr. Young, Councilor Young, thoughts, budget, just to kind of get a sense, a feeling where we're at?
Well, we're within the resolve that we won't spend any bigger increase than, so it's not going to require a vote to go over that limit. So
Correct.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Councilor Walker?
Well, it's a little early, but I'm going to say that I would like to see us look at our CIP and probably tone it down some here, because I think we're $1 million, $1.5 million too high.
On the operating budget or CIP, sir?
CIP.
Yep. Councilor Fournier?
I agree with Councilor Walker. I think we need to take a really serious look at the CIP. There are some large expenditures there. And I wanted to quickly report out what I had reported to this, the school committee, so I'm not going to have to do a report at the end. But when I went there, I represented the city. And what I had said to the school committee is overall, I'd asked what their local share was. I also said, based on Governor Mills' recommendation, the intent of our city and schools should aim for the overall cost of inflation to be below CPI, thereby reducing costs to taxpayers. Keep the levy to taxpayers flat, zero impact. If revenue sharing is forthcoming to benefit the city and the schools, the city strongly recommends applying this amount to a local cost for the new ELHS. And revenue, finally, hopefully, there is potential for city and schools to receive monies from the state. We need to be cautious not to spend before the money is forthcoming, and I think we need to take the same advice.
Okay. Councilor Titus?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having good information. It was easy to read, and I want to punctuate that. But I really do think we have to look forward. There's a lot of things that I've seen already in this budget that may allow us to have a 0% increase in the levy or in the mill rate, or both. So I think we have a great opportunity to look into this and make that happen. And my goal would be to get as close to zero as we can on both sides. CIP, we got a lot to talk about there. That's another discussion. I did have one question, though, for you, Mr. Manager, and that is you talked about debt service of $10 million, I think, when you gave us this presentation. Last year's budget, at least what's shown in the adopted budget, was like $6.7 million in debt service. I mean, am I looking at it wrong? I was looking at last year's adopted budget. It said $6.7 million in debt service. And now we're proposing $10.3 million in debt service, not
Right.
in increased debt.
Right. Yeah, I think the best thing to do is probably, that's a good question, is to prepare an answer for you for the next meeting, which will be
Yeah,
April 1st.
because also after you asked about you wanting to switch over the debt service
Right.
for the arena,
Right.
which you won't have anybody in this corner
Right.
for you with that, but that's another discussion. However, you said that was an intergovernmental increase, or was that in debt service increase?
No, that's a debt service increase, and you're talking about, I think it's around 500,000 with the arena.
Well, it shouldn't be that. Is it that much,
It's being
500,000?
switched. Again, I think the best thing to do is to talk about this.
Okay, but there
next
was such a
Monday.
huge difference that I said, wait a minute, I saw $6.7 million last year approved, and now it's going to 10.3. seems like a pretty strange increase. But
We'll
again, that's
we'll
my
address it.
philosophy.
We'll address it next
I think
month.
there's enough opportunity here. We're very close to it, and I appreciate your hard work, but I think we could very easily get this down to I mean, I want to thank the school committee for getting theirs down to a little over 1%. I'm sure there's always work there, but we'll talk about that later. But getting down as close as we can to zero as possible would be this council's goal, I would think. Thank you.
It's been the mayor's goal, talking about it for like the last 6 months. So, yeah, I think I agree with Councilor Titus. I think it's there. Councilor Hayes?
I think primarily looking at capital items, and we've always had a question, make sure that we bond only for those items that have a 10-year
Right.
life or more.
Right.
And I guess as I quickly look down through, I still have some question on some of the areas that we bond that are more operational.
I think when you get more of the detail, next Monday and the following Monday, it will be easier to understand the logic on the CIP. The requests were about 17 million on the municipal side for CIP items. So we'll go through that next Monday and the following Monday, and I think it'll make more sense, hopefully.
Councilor Lasagna?
I appreciate what Councilor Hayes said about the bonding. It will be good to think of everything we're bonding at least through that lens initially. Just a small question, in the capital needs LA 911, where are we with that changeover?
It's moving forward. They've just recently met, as a matter of fact, to interview different companies, vendors on the radio system itself. This is a big change for 911, LA 911, as you know, going to 800 megahertz. And you'll hear from Paul during the budget process when the joint agencies appear to talk about where we're at and what the status is on that project.
And also what our yearly costs are going to be moving forward.
Correct.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You'll see in his operational increase, his operation has increased very little in terms of the budget that he's requested.
Thank you.
Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilor Titus. We should hold it to at least a zero, or as close as we can, to help get us in better position for when the new school comes online, because they're going to be needing a lot of money to help fund that. And our taxpayers, yes, I'm a broken record, our taxpayers can only get a hit in their wallet just so far. And I want to do what we can now to try to help them relieve some of their burden of the tax rate increase.
Very good. Is there any other questions? We have, I mean, again, this is a first day of a good process. Are there any, I'd say, takeaways at this point that the city manager can relay to staff to look at, or are we good with this? Take a break. We're going to go to the school side, listen to the school side at 6:30. Fair? Okay, Mr. Manager? Nope, got to do 6:30. Yeah. I'm a stickler, you know. Okay, I'm going to call this workshop to close. We're going to take about a 10-minute hiatus, come back at 6:30.
6.7. Why is it 10.3 million this year?
What's this next year?
Don't blame them.
Like 5 days or 7? 6:20.
Katie, you're going to hold this.
Thank you. We always go to the other banks. We'll do that instead of application.
Sometimes goes like that, sometimes goes like that.
4 minutes.
Bless this year.
Right, thank you.
Are they going? Ruth broke his heart. Bless was the only one that was still in. But
Tom, the season over? Going?
Or till middle of April.
Still in Bob, ours.
exactly.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order this workshop, joint workshop with the Auburn School Committee and Auburn City Council, as well as the superintendent and the city manager, March 25th, 2019. We turn it over to the chairman of the school committee at this point, Mr. Kendall. It's your show.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have tonight a short presentation on where the school committee is at this point in time with our budget deliberations. We know you're beginning the citywide budget deliberations, and we need to keep you informed of the progress that the school committee is making as we discuss the funding for the education of the students in Auburn. To that end, we have Katie with a presentation, which many of you may have already seen some of these slides, but it'll be the most current information that we have so far to date. So I'll turn it over to Katie and Adam.
Okay, so thank you for having us. As you know, right now it's the proposed superintendent's budget. As we go through our meetings, the school committee has met 3 times on the budget and will continue to meet. They are not meeting this week, as it was said, with a public hearing, because we think it's a little too soon. So next Wednesday at the budget, they're going to have a budget workshop from 6 to 7, and then have the public hearing during the regular meeting on the budget. So just to keep everyone informed. So tonight, I'm just going to go over the budget drivers, where the budget stands right now. The city manager's already shared with you that we're up 1.117% locally, so I'll explain where that is. So our biggest budget drivers are salary and benefits in this budget. As you know, we're a people business. We employ over 500 employees, approximately 350 teachers, and so the total salary and benefits make up 75% of our budget. The increase of $1.7 million of our budget, which is 5.4%, is our scheduled increases of proposed additional staff. So it's what we have for current staff plus the proposed additional staff that's making up that $1.7 million. So of our total increase, it's 98% of the budget. So it's mostly salary and benefits that are making up our increase. Our budget health insurance rate right now, we are at 7% because Wednesday night, we did not have the insurance information. We knew it was coming in on Thursday, and so the school committee on Wednesday night did give direction around putting that adjustment in insurance towards the local commitment. So we had 12% in there. It's at 7%. We do not have our official rate. We won't have that official rate for another few weeks. We're anticipating, though, it's probably going to be around 7%. We've already been told we're on the high end. And so that represented $387,989,000, which is 22% of our total increase to the budget. So of that $1.7 million, we have $781,916, which accounts for new positions, which I will go over with you, a shift of grant funds to general funds, and a new special education program that's being proposed. So as you can see, just to run our same school department next year would be a $971,929 increase. So just to put it in perspective. New positions, so we meet with every administrator and discuss the needs. Through our meetings, we meet with our, Michelle McClellan, Assistant Superintendent, myself, meet with every administrator throughout the year, and we discuss things that they have needs that we need to have addressed in the budget. One of them is an ELL teacher at Park Avenue School, so we're doing a little bit of a shift that's allowing for this position, which is needed. As I talked to our ELL team leader, which is Robin Fleck, and talking about her needs, the high school will go down a half a position. They have 2.5 ELL positions, so we're taking that half and moving it to Park Avenue, and so half of this is representing that. A teacher that serves in that half is an English teacher as well as EL, so we're making that a full English teacher at Edward Little and making a full Park Avenue. But instead of going 0.5, 0.5, it's really representing an ELL teacher at Park Avenue, just to make it cleaner, not make it confusing. Also, we talked a lot about Walton Elementary School is in need of support similar to Washburn School. So Washburn School had a school improvement grant, and you'll see on the next slide that that grant money is coming down. And Washburn has seen a lot of success, a lot of return on investment with their math interventionists and with support for their behavior. And so looking at that return on investment through the Washburn grant, we thought we need also to do the similar support to Walton Elementary School. So you'll see an interventionist for Walton. This is a teaching position. This person serves to do small group, one-on-one group, support students in the classroom, do pull-out. So an interventionist really helps work with the staff to identify students who need extra support, and that would be that position. There's also an interventionist identified for Auburn Middle School. Auburn Middle School at one time had a literacy specialist and added support there, and when we were in tough budget times, those positions were reduced. So we need to bring back an interventionist for Auburn Middle School. Principal Bob Griffin spoke to school committee about needing reading support, also behavior support. So this person would be coming online to help support their data and looking at students. The two positions for Edward Little High School, you've heard about this because we talked about both these positions for the new high school. However, they are in need now, and so they're important to consider for this year's budget. A computer science teacher. We currently have one science teacher doing a lot of the computer science work, which obviously puts more students in the other science classrooms. So this is an ideal position to help the science department and continue our computer science work. This is a huge area of need for our state, our community, that ongoing technology support and learning for our students. The substance misuse counselor for Edward High School, we had this position about, I don't know how long ago, but it was before I came into central office, so 13 years ago. and it was reduced when we were in tough budget times. They are in dire need of this position to support students with misuse of making choices and needing to work with a counselor on a plan to make better choices, healthy choices. And then you see the Ed Tech 3 support for Walton for the behavior support. We've seen a lot of really good impact on our students having that support when a student needs to come out for a break. We do check-in and check-out for students, so we have students that check in the morning, you're going to have a good day, here's your plan for the day, and then a person checking them out, reinforcing that they're doing the plan, and they can get that immediate feedback. So these we felt were imperative positions going into this year's budget. That accounts for $433,000. The grant positions to general fund, so this is Washburn School, and they have really shown a lot of growth in their academics. They did well this year on their special ed, according to the MEAs last year. So why would you say, because the grant money is running out, that we no longer want to support what's working? So in a commitment to support that school, they've really done a turnaround. That staff is highly committed to the work, and part of that is having support not only for the staff but also for our students. So we have a math coach interventionist, that's Lisa Coburn, if you know her. She's a veteran teacher of ours, she's been in the role. We've invested money in her. We trained her as a coach through University of Maine Farmington, so it only makes sense to keep her expertise in our district in Washburn School. She also provides professional development. The other two positions are Ed Tech 3 for behavior support as well. So they're working really hard so that students in classrooms are learning, and when students need support, they get the support they need. And that represents $144,561.
I'm sorry, one just point. If, sure. This is really difficult. I'm trying to train myself to do this as well. But if we can avoid mentioning people's names and just positions.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there could be some personal knowledge. It's always cleaner if we don't talk about people's names.
Right. She specifically, because she's been in our district, she was first grade teacher.
I know. I always try to remind all of us, and it's something I'm trying to do more of myself.
Okay. No, thank you for that feedback. Also, the new district autism program, so looking at special ed costs. Alfreda's been our person on really reminding us to constantly think outside the box. So Ryan Fairchild, our special ed director, really looked at what is the highest need and a cohort of students that we could bring in, and that's an autism program. So in order to start this program, we need a teacher and an ed tech for each student. So this would be a program for 4 students. It would be housed at Walton School. It costs $204,000. Now, this is just straight up costs. This is a teacher and the 4 ed techs. When you compare it to out-of-district tuition, you can't put a number definitively on those 4 students and how much it would cost for them to be out of district, because it depends on main care and so forth. So when he did the numbers and an average of what an out-of-district tuition, this is about a saving of $13,000 approximately. This program, if it has to, you either are going to use this money in out-of-district tuition or this program. So this $204,000 cannot be reduced from the budget, if that makes sense.
This is your shift. Basically, we're shifting it from a third party back into bringing it in-house.
Correct, exactly. So it's just changing of lines, yes. So instead of being in, yes, it's under salary and benefits rather than out-of-district tuition, yes.
And it's starting small.
Yes, you have to start small.
When it's successful, which will be then expanding, and then having even more savings, realizing more savings.
Correct.
Because people will become, they'll want to have.
Mm-hmm. So overall, these are our cost centers, your articles that the school committee approves and then goes to City Council for the referendum. So as you can see, the largest cost center with the greatest impact is regular instruction, which is that direct impact on students and teachers in the classroom, so that has the highest increase. That's the largest number of staff are in the regular instruction category. Then you see special education, and then the other instruction is your co-curricular. Then you have student staff support, which is your guidance counselor, Office of Learning and Teaching. So any position that supports students, you always start like really close to the classroom, which is the regular instruction, special ed instruction. Then you come out with co-curricular. Then you go into your student staff support, then system administration, school administration. Then you have transportation, facilities and maintenance, your debt service, and then adult ed and crossing guards. So our budget overall is $1.7 million increase, which is 4.1%. So when you look at it with our state funding, we are fortunate this year that we received $1.5 million in additional state aid. That was mostly due to special education costs. We also had four buses? 4 or 5?
We have 3 buses.
But no, for last year. Yes. We had 4 buses in last year's budget, and you get reimbursed for that. So those monies were in there as well. And so locally, we're asking for $209,000 more, which is that 17% increase. The state revenue was up $1.5 million, so that's covering most of our needs. Our other revenue, which we have for tuition, we do our own program, our regional program, and so we collect revenue from that regional program to pay for the Lake Street facility. We also have revenue from our child care that they pay also into using our buildings, paying for custodial service and the use of our facilities. So those are those other revenue sources. Fund balance, we did make a decision to use the same amount of fund balance as we did last year in order to offset that increase to the local contribution. And so our total revenue is $45,488,550. And if you go on current city evaluation, which may change, we don't know what the evaluation is for next year, it would be an 11-cent increase to cover the $209,000.
Sorry, can you just go back one second, just important point, your fund balance?
Correct.
What's your current balance in fund balance pre-using 719?
Yes. 1.2, did we say, Adam? We showed that at the school committee meeting. Do you want to pull that up?
1.2, and then you brought it down by 719? Pull it up.
Right. So.
Yeah, that's correct.
Correct, yeah.
1.2 after
I remembered
accounting
that.
for this year.
Yeah, so yeah, 1.2, but we are not at June 30th yet, so that will be higher than 1.2. Okay, so in June 30th, we will rectify the books again, and so it will be added to that 1.2 million, what we have this year, and then next year, 719,000 of that will go towards the budget. Okay. We are allowed to carry 3% in fund balance. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's the summary. See over.
Okay, a lot of math, thank you very much.
Oh, yes, no,
before I
that's
turn it
right.
over to the council, just a couple things if I could.
Sure.
Let's go through just quick math.
Yes.
Budget is going from X to Y. What is X and Y? Last year's budget?
Was 40, this slide right here? Is that the one you want?
That probably
Yep.
helped. 43,693.
Yep, to 45,488,550. So 1.794767.
Out of the 1.7 million, the sources of revenue are state, 1.5?
State 1.5, yes.
And then local share 200. Okay, but you're talking about using fund balance of 719
Yes.
and applying that to your budget. Where, help me understand where exactly that's going.
No, you have to add up all of our, you have to add up state, local, or other to get the 45,488,550. So when you get the revenue sheet that I attached in your email, you can see all that.
So state's kicking in 1.5 million additional.
Mm-hmm.
You're using $700,000 from your fund balance, so that's 2.2 million and change.
That was in
Yes.
That's the same amount as last year, so there's no change to that.
So there's no change?
Right.
Okay, so you're still using, again,
Correct.
but you're still coming up short 200,000, that's your local increase?
Right.
Or 1.17% as of right now. I'm going to open this up to, Chairman Kendall, if you're good, I'd like just a couple statements. First of all, I think we're all happy, at least part of us are happy that we're getting an increase in rev share from the state, proposed rev share from the state. That's not going to be final until June 1, end of June, July. So we won't know. So that's not a given. Okay, so we can't take that for granted. That's one thing. Second, we keep talking about when our budget times are tough. They're still tough. I mean, extremely tough. Well, let's set the stage with, I love the hard work and the thought process and the utilization return on investment and all the work that goes into it. That's good. And I want to avoid any that position, whatever. That's not my job.
Right.
But I will say from an overarching standpoint, you've heard me state multiple times, I want the increase to the taxpayers, the mill rate, which takes into consideration increased valuation, okay, more people here and so forth, at zero increase. Primarily, because it's nice to say we all want to save taxes and not increase taxes, but also in really preparation for the new high school. I think Councilor Gary said it as well. Setting the stage and planning kind of sowing the field, knowing that we're going to try to hold the line as best we can, if not turn the line back a bit, because it's going to go up with the new high school. That's just a reality. So kind of be a more proactive effort on that. I'm not saying what you've done is not proactive, but I'm just kind of letting you know how, from a policy standpoint, we've been thinking and talking. With that, I'm going to obviously open up to the council and see what they have to say on that as well. So initial thoughts and comments, and I do know the superintendent has to leave at around 7, and so if we could talk about that now before we go on to the city side. Councilor Sonia?
Thank you. In terms of the proposed autism program, could that eventually become a fee-for-service for the district, that children outside the district might come into that program if it's successful? And you may not have the answer, I'm just...
Right now, we have students that have been identified for this program. So parents have already been discussed about this program. So I think with our own population, we will be able to fill it. If we can't fill it, absolutely, we could offer a slot to another district.
Would you eventually think about doing that on purpose to students outside the district?
Well, we probably would, it would save us first. So I would think only if we did not have. For example, at RETC, we have a regional program. We pay slots into that program. That's still less than going to another out-of-district program. So I think as long as we can keep it in line to saving our district funds, we would do that first. Yeah.
I think just a further clarification, one of the considerations would be this is generally a one-to-one, so you have to hire staff for an additional student.
So it would cost you
so it would cost
the same amount for each student.
Essentially, it's almost a wash between the two. So using that, or the incentive is not there to say, oh, gee, we're going to open this up outside to scale it up, other than serving our own population.
Okay, thank you.
But there is a cost savings by serving our own population with a little post-test
absolutely.
Economy of scale.
Yes, yes, definitely.
One would think that naturally it would be because you're not utilizing a third party, but, okay.
Yeah.
Is that basically a one-on-one?
Yes.
I mean, I know the last time I visited Fairview, it's a lot of one-on-one still.
Exactly, yes.
So that's how.
And this is a different program with a different demographic going into it, different makeup. So we want to make sure the students are successful. I mean, if we're going to not have them go to a certain out-of-district placement, we need to make sure we have the same level of expertise in that program to support the students.
Are these students mainstreamed pretty much, or are they in their own classrooms?
No, they will probably be mostly self-contained. However,
I would
because
be
of the...
against that, because you know. But
yeah, but I would say that as they get acclimated to the school, that's the benefit, is then they are more acclimated, they're more accustomed, so they can join into programs. They could go to an assembly if they choose. They can go into a classroom. But at first, it's going to be, let's get the kids acclimated, feeling comfortable, and then see where we go with that. But yeah, the special ed director is very excited about this opportunity. And then we have talked about when the SOS program from Lake Street School moves into the new high school, that would give us opportunity to look at that space for expansion of special ed programming.
Or sell it?
Well, we still have a program there. We're not moving the whole program from Lake Street.
Just throwing this out there, talking about, as we're inventorying the city property and so forth, it's a great piece of real estate. Now, obviously, there's some intrinsic value to it, and there's value that you're using it now.
Yes.
But I would appreciate a hard look at that asset to see if that space is absolutely needed, if it's too much space, if there's other revenue-generating opportunities, or a pure sale of that facility out and take it off the books.
If those students go somewhere else, you will have an increase in out-of-district costs.
Again, let's look at that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying necessarily out of district, but in some other facility that's underutilized. And I don't have the answers to that. Keeping them in system, okay? But when we're looking at utilization of space, it's, space allotment. And there's an ROI to that as well, and a cost benefit to having that at one facility that we're paying to heat and so forth. If it's better suited someplace else, that might be a source of savings without diminishing the outcome.
One of the ideas that I had about, that I had been a special director for a while, and, the idea is the children who are high needs definitely do spend a lot of time together in the same area because of the specialists that are there. They're not just one-on-one with their teacher, but they have specialists that deal with them. The thing is, if you have students who are middle school and high school, that is right in close proximity to the middle school and high school. So if you needed to be able, wish to have them become acclimated, become, integrated with some of the high school and middle school events, there are some events that they can do, and then come back. It's not a long trip between Lake Street and the middle school and high school. So that's something to think about down the road.
As long as the analysis is done, I think, fairly and impartially, I think we can, all those are obviously tangibles and intangibles.
It's just trying to get the kids back into the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that's going to raise them after they're done school, and should be raising them now.
Great. Okay. Next, Councilor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few years ago, your predecessor tried to do a program to try to keep children with learning difficulties in-house versus sending them out. They bought property up near BJ's, and they had great plans. Mm-hmm. I think they were working with either the college or St. Mary's Hospital, and I don't think it totally got off the ground. If it did, it didn't last for very long.
That is the program that's at Lake Street School. That program that started where you're talking about. Oh, she's talking about Annie Woodbury. Okay. No, she said special needs.
By BJ's.
Yeah.
It's the old Annie Woodbury School.
But there was Annie Woodbury and RETC.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So the special ed program, RETC, was started by BJ's, and then it moved to the Lake Street School. Yeah. So it's still there. Yes.
The program's still there. We don't own that real estate by BJ's anymore, or the school does.
No, we do not. We turned that over. No, we don't own that.
Turned it over to.
I believe the city. Yes, the city had it.
Follow up to see if we own it still.
No.
No, we sold it.
Yeah.
We sold it, and we turned the money over to the city.
Yes.
So that's been just, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Any questions? Councilor Fournier?
I have another question, and that's, I believe I've mentioned it before, and that deals with ELL.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that the need for another ELL teacher is because you have a large migration of ELL people coming in, or is it because you just don't have enough teachers? Because
it's the needs of the students. So at next Wednesday, I'm going to ask Robin Fleck to be there to explain the need for that position.
Okay.
She didn't present to you.
Because I will go back and ask the question again, how long does a student need to have an ELL teacher until he or she is finally acclimated and is able to get in the mainstream and speak English and use English to learn his or her other subjects? We shouldn't have, from my perspective, we shouldn't have to have an ELL teacher follow that child for the entire time that they're in school. There reaches a point where they need, and that's just a natural progression. So for me, that's the goal.
Yeah, and as I explained at our meeting, so it's good that you brought up so everybody can hear, the ELL students need to pass the access test, which is a mandated test. And they have to be at a 5 or higher in order to not need ELL services. So when those students take the access tests and all of our assessment tests, plans are put in place. And so depending where students are, as I explained to you, ELL students can speak English very well, but that doesn't mean they don't need support with their language and reading and writing and their math skills as well. So, but Robin Fleck will speak on that, the need and how long students need.
Thank you.
Councilor Titus?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, but, and thank you for what I think is a very responsible budget. I really like the, obviously, we got a nice influx from the state, so it'd be nice
Yeah,
if we
definitely.
had less local tax share, but you know, that me, I'll never be happy there. But I have a question on Washburn School, a couple of
Yes,
questions.
sure.
First of all, if you could make an arrangement for me to take a tour or visit the school.
Oh, absolutely,
I'd love to.
definitely.
Because I've been watching this pretty much. I know that we received a federal grant a few years back, and I think it was a couple of $300,000 a year thereabouts, $1 million over 3 years or something like that, to help a school that was in trouble.
Correct.
And I see that grant's ending, and that means these positions will have to be local share or
Right.
district. But how about the other expenses? Is that ongoing? Or did we just stop spending that amount of money at Washburn? And what was the result? Because I was looking at, I don't know if this report, is this any good, this fall data
Yeah,
report?
it is.
And it showed that they were like 16% at the state average, and there hasn't been much increase in the city for the last 3 years. In fact, it's been decreasing compared to the state. And how does Washburn compare over these 3 years, and did that influx of money make any difference, or if it didn't, why, and why are we continuing if it didn't make a difference over 3 years?
Right. Well,
That could be savings, is what I'm saying. If it's not working, it could be savings to the budget and be used somewhere else.
okay, so, lots there.
I know. I'm
No,
sorry.
that's,
And you only got a few minutes.
That's okay, that's all right. They have done incredible work. So that assessment that they take in the fall is very much evidence of summer slide. That does occur from our
I'm
spring
going to
data.
get state average, so I mean, everybody has a summer
Right,
slide.
right.
Everybody in
That's not the state
does.
average on that, because that's our own local. The MEAs is a different story.
Oh.
So when you looked at that, the
MEAs, I suppose.
no.
No?
Some is,
MEA,
I'd have to
three-year
look at it.
comparison.
Yep, the MEA, but what you saw in the fall for Washburn, that would be summer. For the MEAs, yes. Washburn has, yes, it's a struggle school. That's why it qualified for a school
Right,
improvement
and
grant.
I guess
Yes.
my feeling is that we'll spend the money we need to
Correct.
make things better if
Absolutely.
they're making things better.
Yeah.
So that's why I'd like to take a visit there.
Oh,
if
you
could arrange
absolutely
that.
can take a
Also,
visit. They've done a lot of work. The growth in the students' growth measure of where they start in the fall to the spring has been growing year after year. They also have a high mobility rate. We've tried to stabilize the teacher turnover rate as well. And part of meeting with the principal was, what have you had for support that you don't need because you've had this kind of support? So not everything that they've had is in what we're requesting.
Right.
We did discuss.
You had to take away some because
Correct.
it's no longer
Absolutely,
funded
right.
by the grant, so
Yes,
there is some losses.
correct.
there.
So what we put in the budget, what we have in the budget is what we saw strong return on investment with the school. That's what you're seeing. So meeting with the principal after he's talked with the staff, what do we need to keep the momentum going forward? This is what we identified as the highest needs to keep things moving forward.
If I could just interject, I know you have a second part of your question, but to follow up on this one, have we done an analysis on what the demographics of each school would look like if no student exceptions were allowed?
You mean the number of students that come from other districts? You mean
i.e.
how-
within Auburn? I'm just talking about within Auburn. Have we done, so any students that live in the Washburn district that have exemptions to go to a different school?
Correct.
Have we done an analysis if that wasn't in existing? In other words, pull that student's scores out of their new school and put them into the originating or districted schools, so you can actually see what the balance is at that point. I don't say it's not number manipulation, but it's a true sense. Because if you have a failing department and you get a self-fulfilling prophecy, I would think.
Right.
I've heard it. I live here. It's not like it from away. I want to buy this house, but I don't want to have my kids go to Washburn. I'd like my kids to go to Fairview. Those are granted. Kid goes to Fairview. Those
Or
kids'
Park
numbers fall
Avenue.
with them. Or, say again?
Or Park Avenue,
Or
which we're
whatever,
having
yeah,
expansion
Park
throughout.
Avenue.
Anywhere. And all of a sudden, you get enough of that, and you get critical, I look at it's like,
Critical
it's like
mass.
virus inoculations, right? You know, you get that critical mass of people that aren't inoculated, and then what happens? I'm afraid, you know, and I've heard this from residents, that might be happening within the city. Again, please don't misconstrue this school committee for me getting involved too much, but I think from an understanding of budgetary needs on a school basis, individual school, it's important to look at that data and ask those questions of what would it look like if there was no manipulation of student enrollment.
I think you're assuming that there are a ton of students that don't go to Washburn that live there. That number isn't, right.
No,
Right.
that's what I've been hearing, so I'm not going to
Okay,
assume
no,
anything.
right,
But I'd like
exactly,
to know.
yeah.
I think, and
Yeah.
if it's a rumor, well, let's put it to
Right.
bed one way or the other.
I mean,
It's
there
always
are
good.
definitely, all of our schools, parents go to different schools for different variety of reasons.
And I don't want to pick on Washburn or any other school. I think
No.
we should, it
I
would be
mean,
nice to see an analysis of it
wouldn't
across the board.
It would be great to redistrict and make them all more equitable, but I have a feeling that if we did that, that would be an interesting conversation.
But just looking at the exemptions and backing those out and applying them and those children's scores to the appropriate districted schools. I'm not talking about redistricting or anything like that, but after a certain point, you get that, like, that's a herd mentality, if I remember correctly, and all of a sudden, you start going down the path of, kind of like the 1970s and busing and such, okay? It's pretty extreme. We don't want to be there, but, you know, that's what some people can feel like, and looking at it.
I think I did I think and I have it, because I did a presentation how many students, because somebody asked how many students were going to the variety of schools, and we put those out there. I did not put the student achievement data, no, but we did talk about how many students, we have parents that request Washburn as well. So, but yes, we've done that analysis, I certainly can share that. But not the analysis of the student achievement.
The second
That
part.
wouldn't be too burdensome, that would be nice to see, though.
The second part of my question is, and I want to make sure that I don't offend anybody that I think that hasn't been looked at, but a few months back, this council was barraged with a lot of questions about our teaching procedures like PBL and mass customized learning and the costs involved, and we
Right.
all got barraged with tons of emails about this.
Yes.
And we know it costs a lot of money. So I guess my concern would be is if we could possibly, before it's time to vote for this budget, have an analysis of how that's working. Because when I look at this fall report and I see that we're still considerably behind the state average for the last 3 years, and wondering, you know, was putting more money into a program, if there's a better way or not a better way, if it's been looked at, I would appreciate, you know, a report or some sort of information that could be sent to me before the budget is passed.
I'm not sure I'm clear on what you mean by a
Well, I'm
lot of
saying
money
we
is
have a
spent.
system we're using, well, I mean, I think PBL and mass customized learning has coaches and expenses involved and training and all kinds of stuff that may not be there if you didn't use that system. Is that not correct?
That's not correct.
Okay.
That's not accurate.
So
there-
training doesn't go along with, I mean, my understanding is, as I know, if you're teaching a certain method and you haven't been teaching it, training goes along with it, so the teachers will know how to train.
We do coaching and our professional development on Marzano's teacher framework.
Right.
Because we have to, by state law, have a teacher evaluation system. And Auburn has Marzano. So we have our coaches helping support with Marzano. We also have, well, let's be clear on the coaches. We have 2 instructional coaches for technology in the district. We have an instructional coach at the middle school, and we have an instructional coach at the high school. And then we have a half of an instructional coach for district that also does gifted and talented. Those are coaching positions, just to be clear.
Oh, okay. I mean-
Okay? The other, well, just to be
Yep.
clear. And our teacher evaluation, we do that with our professional development time. Our administrators do a lot of their professional development as well. So there are, if you look at our cost center where there's student staff support, that's up 81,000 due to teacher salary and benefits. We were members of the cohort for customized learning. That membership has been removed this year. We are no longer members of that. We are going to be using more of the Maine curriculum leaders group to support our teaching and learning. So there is not, if you've said to me how much in your budget is for PBL, there isn't. That we are doing Marzano's work. We're also doing what's best for students and making sure their needs are met.
Okay. Well, that's really contrary to what we've been hearing, but that's
Yes.
good to hear that. So
Yeah.
Mass Customized Learning or PBL, neither one of those costs extra money in the budget
Correct.
that we don't.
That is
Didn't
correct.
do those, it wouldn't change the budget
Correct.
one iota, is what you're
Right.
saying. Okay, well, then I guess I don't need the report. I just was looking at, like I say,
Yeah,
this report.
I mean, the
seeing that
data,
it's
we
improved.
tackle our data all the time. The state MEA data went down as well. The state
Yeah,
data did not go up.
It looked like it went down a little
Right.
bit. But,
But why did
They-
it go down, Katie? Didn't we have 5 different years of 5 different
Yes,
tests?
we've had different assessments.
Well, I just go by the
Different-
state. When your average measured against what everybody else is measured against.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't say
Right.
something that's a screw if it's measured to
Right,
everything else.
right. Everything is averaged, right?
That's right, so you're against the state average, if everybody's
Correct.
tested the same way, so
That's right. Mm-hmm.
where you fall there is, you can't be saying that it's skewed somehow, it's all fair measurement. If all
Well,
school
I don't know if
districts are
we
measured.
consider it fair measurement, but our Commissioner of Education is not standing by the data as well, so,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
So you said about turnover rate of teachers. What is our turnover rate?
At Washburn,
No,
we were at 12% this year.
12%.
Which was about average when I called, when that was a hot topic. There are districts at 18%, 15%, there are other districts at 10%. So we were not different than other districts.
And I know you always hire the best qualified
We do.
candidate. But when we look at that $80,000 a year, is that the top
Which
tier?
one? Are you talking about the cost of a teacher?
Yes,
That's with benefits.
that's with benefits.
Yes.
Is that the top
The middle of the
step?
scale with benefits.
That's the middle of the scale.
Correct. Yeah. So turnover can happen for a variety of reasons. People want to live closer to home. Things have changed where there are more openings, so people are more apt to move. Back about, 15 years ago, 2007 era, people weren't moving at all because seniority mattered a lot. You weren't going to move because you didn't want to risk being at the bottom. When you moved to another district, you're at the bottom again and starting up. And so you held on. Now, because there's opening and mobility, people are able to move. So if you've been commuting for an hour one way and you get a job 15 minutes away from home, you're more apt to leave. You're also, Southern Maine pays considerably more than Central Maine. So we hold on to our staffs with what we provide, and I think we do an excellent job.
So are you comfortable by using that middle of the scale?
Yes.
For the position?
Yeah, you're going to have high and low. That's why you pick middle. Back to the average, right? Yeah.
Is there any other questions for Superintendent before?
Oh, one real quick question. If you get any more money from the state, will you give it back to the taxpayers?
You can always discuss it, Andy.
I know, okay.
We've not heard yet.
I know.
We have no indication.
To be honest with you, I ain't going to bank on any extra from the state. And frankly, I think we need to be prepared for a cutting of the educational assessment. One thing on that note is I'm concerned because money, as we've all seen in the past 10 years on the municipal side, ebbs and flows like the
Yes.
tides. We are, the difference, the delta from 2010 to now on the municipal side is millions of dollars less.
18.3 million less.
Not that you know that number.
Peter knows that number very well.
Very well. I know, we've had many conversations about it. But the same thing can happen and has happened with education. And I'm concerned when we see a sudden influx of revenue streams that we spend it. And the question I had is the state kept funding flat, would you come back with this increase this year, knowing that a new high school was looming on the horizon on the same day for a budget vote on the same exact day as a budget vote for the high school?
Our budget is always what's best for students.
It's good. So the real answer is, would you go and present a $150 increase to an average $150,000 house, knowing that the next question on that one ballot is to approve an increase in local share for our portion of a high school? The same day, so people are gonna vote for the school budget the same day as
You're doing a hypothetical, and we're not at the hypothetical.
But if we're always doing something best for students,
Yes. And if
hypothetically, so you're telling me if we didn't get zero increase in educational dollars from the state, that this is the budget you'd be presenting to us?
Mayor Levesque, this is a responsible budget with students in mind and being efficient.
So the answer is yes. This would be the same budget regardless of education money increases from the state.
We would have to discuss fund balance. We would have to discuss other things.
Yep. Councilor Walker?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your budget. I think you've done a lot of work there to bring this budget in, but I think that we, as a budget for the city of Auburn, is going to ask our manager to make cuts in his budget, and I feel that we have to ask you to still cut this budget a little bit more. So that's how I feel about it. I know you've done a great job with it, but again, I would feel left out if I was not to say that I think you've got to bring this budget just a little bit less than where you are now. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your time.
Welcome. I am going to stay probably 10 more minutes.
You sure?
Well,
Okay. Hey, it's your choice. I mean, you got to deal with the consequences
well,
of that.
you know, you have to trust the process. So we'll see if I can trust it.
Trust it. Very good. Thank you. With that said, we're going to take it over to Adam.
Yes.
Go for it.
I got to switch to it
There are-
technologically.
Get switched over here. I'm going to run quickly through our CIP proposal. So working together with Katie and our facilities director, Billy Hunter, who's here, this is the proposal that we brought to school committee last week. Just a review of the goals we look at. We want to maintain our facilities for health, safety, and structural soundness, increase energy efficiencies where possible, and our third goal has been to replace Edward Little High School. So we're very hopeful that that goal will be achieved very soon. So I broke this up into two groups, starting with priority one, our critical needs. And thank you, Tom. First up is the new Edward Little High School, as has been discussed at school committee and city council. The plan is to take $600,000 of previously bonded school CIP funds, allocate $200,000 from next year's CIP funds as well as the following year. So this is that first infusion of $200,000. Actually, I shouldn't say the first. This was, you may remember, this was in here in the current year as well. So really this is number 2 out of 3 to get us to that $1 million that will not be part of the bond on the referendum question, the 20-year bond. The technology side, we are in need of upgrading 3 servers in the central office. They have reached or exceeded their useful life, and these are the finance software, remote access server, and employee self-service, and a grand total of about $12,631 to replace all 3 of those. And we do believe we'll get close to 10 years, and when they get beyond this use, we do repurpose them elsewhere in the district.
Adam, could you mention the iCloud, how the difference is between this, you know, the question that was asked?
Yeah, the question of moving to the cloud, we looked at moving our finance software to the cloud with our software provider, and it was going to be far more expensive to do so, both initially and on an ongoing basis. Because we do have the staff to maintain our servers, it's in our best interest financially to do it in-house, but we will continue to look at it periodically.
Thank you.
Walton School, we're looking to replace the bleachers. This is a project that we've discussed for quite a while, and these bleachers are old, and we'd like to upgrade them with something safer. You can see the openings, you know, as you walk up the bleachers, no handrails, things are open, and we've discussed upgrading with something that'll be safer, that'll be handicapped accessible, that will have a couple sets of handrails going up. We met with the recreation department. We actually took a trip over to Walton and discussed how would this work for the school department with the next 5 years needing to still play our football games there, and then how would it serve as a community asset moving beyond that. We talked about what size bleachers would we need, and what type of needs would the rec department have if they have more access to Walton Field. And so we all felt that a slight downgrade in size would work to meet both needs. And so with that in mind, the quote is about $109,000 to move the school department forward for the next 5 years, and then looking beyond as more of a community asset.
And it's a 14-foot drop from the top to
From the
bottom.
top, Bonnie, yes, it's a 14-foot drop.
That's
How many
scary.
kids drop a year? Out of curiosity.
It's been 0, and we'd like to make sure it stays at that. That's the goal.
I almost did, to hang on to somebody.
And you're not a kid.
I know.
Are we, by law, are we required to change them at this point, or by any safety rules?
We're not required by law to do so, but we think it's the prudent thing to do.
It's because of safety we're changing them.
Right, and we actually looked into refurbishing to make them to the level we'd want to be, and it was within the ballpark of costing almost as much to do that. It wouldn't have made sense. It makes more sense to replace.
Is there any value in what's there now? Are they going to tear it out and scrap it?
Yep, we'd be looking to scrap it and get what we can for it. A couple of years back, we asked G&E Roofing to do a report, inspect all of our school roofs, and give us a plan for replacement and refurbishing. And we started that plan this past summer, and this coming summer calls for a small restoration on part of Walton's roof, $26,000. This is the biggest new project that you'll see here at Franklin School, knowing that we will have a program there for years to come, and that the lift that we have there has reached the end of its useful life. What we found out is the company that manufactured it has been out of business for 15 years, and it's going to be difficult to get parts. But also, it doesn't reach the bottom floor, and there's a lot of education that goes on down there. So to truly be handicap accessible and meet the needs of student population now and in the future, it's time to put in a lift that will go down to that bottom floor, as well as upgrading the one that needs to be replaced. The elevator shaft would go down to an area with boys and girls bathrooms, which are those two other pictures that you see there. They're very much in need of a complete overhaul. And so it makes sense to do it all as one project. It'll be in the same space. And this will be a great upgrade to the students and staff over at Franklin. So altogether for the entire project, we have an estimate of $416,900. Fairview School, the rear entrance is not handicapped accessible. We're looking to install the hardware to make that door handicapped accessible this summer. They do have students that need to access that door in wheelchairs, and currently it doesn't meet the needs. Auburn Middle School's choir risers are very old and worn out, and they also don't have the safety rails in the back. So it's time to upgrade those, both from a safety standpoint and from a use standpoint. And so the quote that we have is $11,645 to do that. So those were our priority 1, moving to priority 2. New truck with plow and sander for our support services staff. This would replace a 2008 at an estimated cost of $45,000. The current truck that will be replaced, we're looking to repurpose that within the district for transportation needs. It would be more of a utility truck for transportation, as well as still assisting with plowing at the facility at the support services building.
Adam, have we looked to partner with the city on plowing and using their trucks and vice versa?
So, and Billy can come up if I missed anything, but that discussion has happened several times over the years, and there have been discussions this year as well. And the feeling is that the city has its fleet and we have our fleet, and when there's a snowstorm, those trucks are all out on the road, whether it's clearing the roads or clearing our schools so that we can try to open for school the next day. There was discussion about one area where the city felt it could help. Billy, if you want to explain that.
I met earlier this year with Dan Goyette and Scott Holland at the Public Works Department, and we discussed ways that we could possibly save in our budget. As Adam already mentioned, when it snows, everybody's busy. The roads have to be cleared, and so don't the schoolyards at the same time. So it's a very, I don't know how to really say it. There's no really way you can share vehicles at that time. Plus, their vehicles aren't really conducive to parking lots. They're big road vehicles. We're more of the pickup one-ton style for the parking lot use. But the end result is that we're all plowing at the same time. They're out in the middle of the night plowing the streets, getting them ready, and we're out in the middle of the night doing parking lots, getting ready for the next day of school. So sharing vehicles would be a very difficult thing.
That's why no other municipality in the state of Maine has a combined service between municipal and school?
You can combine it, but they're gonna, their vehicles and manpower are out at the same time ours is. So you're either gonna take my manpower and bring it to public.
So the way Auburn does it is more efficient? So everybody should probably follow them.
I think so,
Be interested to see that case study. I think MMA and MEA might want to see that because everybody's hunting for the same bird, right? Yeah. And if it's efficiency, then if this is the most efficient system, by definition, everybody in Maine should have it, or should be doing what we're doing. We should share. They are.
Well, there seems to be
because there seems to be a lot of municipalities that have combined support services, especially with plowing, all under municipal umbrellas versus separate school and municipal. So I'm just trying to search on what's the most efficient way from a cost standpoint.
Are you suggesting that Public Works do the schoolyards?
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm the mayor. I can't. I'm suggesting, excuse me, I'm stating that there's a lot of municipalities within state that do not have separate service and support units for school and municipality.
Yeah.
Mayor, with all due respect, I'd like to know which municipalities those are.
Okay.
That hasn't been my experience.
Yeah, well, then I'd like to see Cumberland, for example. We talked about Cumberland, too.
Yeah.
South Portland MOUs in place, too, with regards to service and support, 7-yard trucks versus F-250s, plowing efficiency.
There are reasonable, rational reasons why some municipalities and school departments are doing things different than we are. I mean, we can provide more information for you on that.
Again, our job here, as fiduciary responsibility, is to look and probe and ask everything, and look for examples of best cases and best practices, regardless of where they may lie. The minute we start thinking that we're the best at everything we do is the minute we won't be. So, hence the questions have to be asked.
And I agree with that approach. I think both Kitty and I agree with the idea of continuous improvement and always looking at ways that we can improve what we're doing.
Well, I think we have to actually want to do it. I mean, I've worked with our sewer and water district trying to combine help there and had no results there. Every time we turn around, there's a reason why we can't come together. I mean, in our CIP, we've got a very expensive excavator that's on the CIP for Public Works. We just bought one in the sewer department, our sewer district, water district. They are still renting from Easy All Rental because they don't have a particular piece of equipment that we have. I mean, I don't know that we do enough collaboration. So.
Yeah, I mean, something you should know, our plow people are our maintenance people. So they serve in multiple roles. When I talked to the Lewiston superintendent, they rent out their plow, they do contracts to plow out. So I think what Billy's point, yes, all of our equipment and stuff could go to Public Works to use for plowing and so forth, and then Dan would say, I need 5 more positions to do that. So our people are doing multiple things. We don't high plow, we don't how, just like Public Works, they do multiple things.
Yeah, we could look at that outside contractor too, because I've had people made a good case that have an outside contractor who is somebody who lives in town, who is an entrepreneur, who'd like to make some extra money, who we could help the economy and farm out the work.
Right.
As opposed to having our own in-house, and make sure we're carefully looking at that combination, and then we've got a lot less liability for all kinds of reasons. For having
You just got to count on them.
Oh, I think I don't think that would be an issue.
No, I'm just, that puts, yeah. And I don't believe they have one, I think they do different contracts with different. Yeah.
Okay, let's continue.
Fairview School is in need of upgrading their classroom furniture across the school for students and staff. So looking at desks and chairs, there's an estimate of about $85,000 to upgrade that school. We look at this in schools on an as-needed basis, and Fairview was the school that was discussed this year as having a heavy need there. Auburn Middle School casework, you may remember this from last year. This is something we have to put back on the list in prioritizing our funds. We weren't able to do this with the existing funds, so we are putting it back on the list as a request for the coming year.
Did you take it out last year too, when we went back and revised budgets? Is that why? Because it was, I believe, $800,000 last year for casework at AMS.
No, it stayed on the CIP list with this amount.
Last year?
Yes, for FY20. It was on the list.
So this is going to be an additional 514 than what was already?
Correct.
So on top of the original? Okay.
Correct. As you know, we don't receive the full allotment that we request, and we do have to prioritize as things come along. So this is the one that you'll see as a repeat.
Where does that casework go? Which rooms is that going to be? That nice Bellegarde stuff.
The big areas will be the science rooms and the art room. Those are the ones most in need of upgrade. They'll be pushing 40 years.
Yes, well, I said Bellegarde.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. My son's got my Bellegarde in his cellar, in his man cave.
Looking at school safety, we have 4 remaining buildings. We'd like to install alarm systems. These would tie into 911, as do the rest of our buildings. So we're looking to do that at an estimated cost of about $114,000.
Is that just all 4 buildings or one building?
That's to do all 4.
114,000.
Correct.
Remember that, Mr. Manager. 4 buildings, 114,000. That's a great number.
That's a good number.
What is that for? Yeah. What does that do?
Billy, do you want to talk to that?
That's just a security system intrusion.
Right. It's not 800 megahertz or
No.
any of that.
No.
An intrusion alert
It's just an
system.
intrusion for doors and long hallways, motions in long hallways. Nothing elaborate.
So the 800 megahertz, is that the new system that is working with this, with the police department and 911 and all that?
Right.
And we're tied into it now? The school department will be tied into it?
Will be.
Will be tied into it. And I thank you very much. That's fantastic that we'll be tied into it.
Yes.
Make a big difference.
Again, at Fairview, the library carpet is about 23-ish years old.
Yes.
This picture probably doesn't do it justice, but it's very much in need of replacement, so we're looking to do that this summer.
Looks great. Save that for the new high school.
Thank you. We will.
Hold that up.
Looking at our elementary school playgrounds, we brought this up with the principals, and all 6 schools have needs that they would like to address. So what we'd like to do is begin addressing those needs with things like swing sets, new equipment, site improvements, removal and replacement of wooden structures with safer and more long-lasting equipment. And so we're requesting a $50,000 allocation to begin those upgrades at the elementary schools.
And my question is that I know that we did at Washburn, we used CBDG money for Washburn. So is there, and I know CBDG has to be in a certain area on it. So are there any CBDG money that we can use, whether it's in Washburn, Walton, or whatever
East Auburn.
I don't know whether that's a CBDG, that's not going to be a CBDG. But is there money that we can use? I don't know who to.
It's got to be.
It has to be in a catchment area, which is eligible for CDBG funding for one thing. There is a budget that's already being reviewed by the council for this coming year on CDBG. It hasn't been approved yet, but it has been discussed and reviewed. I will ask the manager of the CDBG program what he thinks about that going forward. The chair of our advisory committee for that is Councilor Lasagna. We can certainly look at that going forward. I don't think there's anything we can do for this coming year, but
Write an application for next time.
And we did it, we used some.
Yeah, we had in the
for Washburn.
They did.
yeah.
And Walton.
Good utilization.
That's an option.
And then looking beyond FY20, looking to FY21, would be the last installment of the $200,000 for the new Edward Little. A phase 2 if needed for playground equipment based on what we find out over the next year. Looking to replace the Washburn playground fence and perhaps expanding out in the back that playground area for about $75,000. And then looking at the East Auburn tennis courts to make them playable again. And so that's a discussion we'd like to have with the city over the coming year. What does that look like as a community resource? But these are ideas of things, and they are on the list for future years.
Our tennis courts are at the high school, is that correct?
Yes,
That
our
we
tennis
use
courts
for-
that our teams use are at the high school.
That our teams use. So it would be just a luxury for us to have them at East Auburn. So hopefully, what?
Conservation money.
For that one? To give that to the mayor, to the manager, to look at the land and conservation money, to see if you can do
more.
Add it to it.
and see what you can do with that.
I'll wave my magic wand.
Exactly.
There you go. Go to Disney.
Please do.
Go to Disney.
Anyone going to Walt Disney, Harry Potter Land, buy one.
And
Back.
so that brings us to the end of the list. Our grand total for FY20 requests is $1.6 million. So are there any further questions on those?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, one question, though, if I could, and I don't want to add too much work. Hopefully, this is something that's readily available. Last year's CIP, oh, you're good.
Oh, no, I'm not.
No, well, last year's CIP, the trust you have in me is just it's great. It's unbounding. Could we get some pictures of what was accomplished with last year's CIP, just so we can see it the after?
Definitely.
Maybe
We
a little before and
actually did
after. The casework at AMS, the fencing at Walton, for example, off the top of my head.
Right. We did a presentation to the school committee, and I'll forward that along to you.
Perfect.
Keep in mind, most of what we requested last year will be done this coming summer.
Understandable. Okay. No, that'd be great. That would be nice to track overall. I'm glad the school committee's doing it. But that way, when constituents ask us, at least we can say that stuff's been done.
Absolutely.
One comment?
Councilor Titus?
Yeah, one final comment, that is, that, again, I appreciate the work doing this. I like seeing 1% or less increases. I would ask that because of the referendum question that's coming up, that it certainly would be useful if we could get to a zero budget, only because maybe next year we won't be able to. State funding could be cut, there could be all kinds of reasons. Whenever we can, we should. And this year especially would really look nice on that ballot to see and get more affirmative votes for the project if we could do it. And so I would sincerely ask that you could do that. I'm asking the city to get as close to zero as they can. And it would really, I think, would be a good thing whenever we can, until we have this bonding in place and the project is underway. It would just be useful.
We've heard that.
Question for Washburn School. I heard that maybe the St. Mary's are going to plant or have garden. Will that be fenced in by yours or theirs?
Theirs. It's a community, it's a community garden.
They'll fence it?
Yeah, they'll fence it in, similar to what they've done at the one by Webster and the one, but they're going to do I think we talked about 6-foot fence.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor, that was in the CDBG.
Right, and I
That's a
too
CDBG,
agree
yeah,
with
that's a
Councilor
CDBG.
Titus too, as well as the city. I had said that earlier, but I don't think I made myself that clear, but I would like to see the city at 0% as well. I think these are tight times. We've got a lot of expenditures coming up, important ones. We can't have everything, so let's have the stuff that we really truly need and put some on the back burner, but I think the city goes, for me, the city is 0% as well.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Okay.
Grondin. Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to turn this over to Peter Creighton, City Manager, his presentation.
Brian's going to do his magic, then I'll start. Adam, thank you.
Thank you.
Are we finished?
You can stay if you want. It's the school side. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd love it if school committee could stay if you had time, because I think it's important for you to see what the municipality is facing with too. All too often over the years, it's all one-sided or so perceived. So you're part of this. For the record, I do love Mac and AirPlay, So good job, school.
Should have popped on. All right, Brian. So what I'm about to give is a 5-year CIP, which I'm required to do. As I said earlier, next Monday and the following Monday, I'll speak about our fiscal year 20 CIP in 2 parts, part 1 next Monday and part 2 the following Monday. What you're going to look at tonight is the 5-year plan. The FY20 column is not a reflection of my recommendations. I'll talk about that a little bit. I know you've already heard this many times, but keep in mind when you talk about what you'd like to achieve with this budget, the City of Auburn has lost $18.3 million in municipal revenue sharing to the state since 2010. And because of the way they're not reimbursing us adequately on state exemptions, the exemptions are outpacing our valuations. So it's very challenging, not just for us, but for municipalities in general, and particularly service center communities like Auburn. Brian, the longer you take, the more I feel like I need to say something.
Peter, did the $18 million
18.3
that we lost, did other communities lose that, or were we asleep at the wheel and we didn't participate in where we should have been?
No, what happened is the
Thank you, David.
The state legislature has not funded municipal revenue sharing for all the municipalities. And our share of that loss is $18.3 million. Since 2015, municipalities in general have lost $466 million in revenue, just since 2015.
How can you make it up?
We can't.
Right.
But what we're asking for is that the state legislature restore the full funding to what it should be. We should be getting $4 million a year, and we're getting $1.6 million. That would make a huge difference in terms of what we're doing.
We're getting 40% of the 100%.
That's right. That's exactly right,
So we're getting 40%.
Yep.
So for any municipality, it's 40% of theirs.
So hey, I think our job's done. If you all want to leave, you understand the burden we're going through. It's every year
But we've
we
been
get
going
less and
through
less
that
and
for
less.
years, right?
Yeah, since 2010, and consistently going down. The 2010 numbers are telling just in the past 9 years the decrease annually. So it's been putting more and more strain on the municipality because we've just had less.
Phil, this is not the PowerPoint presentation. I don't know if that's...
Keep scrolling.
It keeps scrolling, huh? Okay.
It's after the school.
This is my memo, which you have all seen probably.
Just ask Brian to jump to page 124.
There you go. I don't want to bore people.
Yeah, 129.
This is the memo. You know where it is? There you go. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay.
So now we're really into it and we're not just chit-chatting?
That's right. No.
I don't know if I'll call it chit-chatting, but that sounds good. So the goals of the City of Auburn in terms of our long-term CIP, there are 4 general areas: economic development, education, citizen engagement, strong neighborhoods. In terms of the Auburn-Lewiston Airport, this is what we have plugged into our 5-year CIP at this point in time. Again, FY20, keep in mind, this isn't necessarily a reflection of what I'm going to present next 2 Mondays. Further continuation on the Auburn-Lewiston Airport. Councilor Hayes sits on their board, as does the finance director. I think it's fair to say that they're having lots of discussions about what they want to do with the airport going forward. When Rick Landman comes in, he'll speak about that as part of the joint agency's presentation. Here's the city clerk's office. The restoration monies for records. We are under some state statutory requirements regarding record restoration. For FY20, for example, I have put in 20,000, I believe is the number, not 100,000. We are under some obligation to do this, and Sue can talk about it. It's an issue that we do need to deal with. It takes up space, and there's also that requirement that we do maintain these records in a proper way. Economic community development, there's money in there for the new Auburn Village Center revitalization, the continuation of that. Dangerous building demolitions, which we are involved with, it seems every year. We also have an acquisition program where we acquire buildings at times. Strategic plan implementation, one of the councilors asked me about that earlier. That's not even in the FY20 budget, but what that figure represents are concepts that are coming out of the strategic planning process that's underway right now. I'll give you a couple examples. One is following through on the Great Falls Plaza plan that was envisioned years ago, and actually doing work on that to implement that plan. I know that there's an interest on the part of Tom Platts to continue to do something there. Also, another concept is to do something to try and further promote what we're doing with sports tourism, tourism in general, with the stage. Remember the stage that we used for the New Year's event? We had to rent that. Just imagine if we actually had a stage that we could utilize at the arena and we could use for different events. That's the idea behind that. So we become a city of events. Downtown parking and walkability, we've talked about that before. That is a goal, definitely, of the city. It's coming up as a priority in the strategic planning process. And then you have electrical vehicle replacement. The electricians come under the Economic Community Development Office. You see there are some other needs that have been identified, and I will have some recommendations in the FY20 budget regarding this. There's a continuation, some other items having to do with the Economic Community Development Office. Again, I'll be presenting part 1 and part 2 of my proposed CIP next Monday and the following Monday. Under facilities, you have the Public Works roof replacement. We do need to do something regarding that. It's leaking through the roof and it's causing problems. We need to address it. Then you have other items like the central fire boiler replacement, which I will speak about next Monday and the following Monday, along with other items that I'm going to speak about tonight. So there is this 5-year plan that we try to follow, and it is important that we have a guideline that we can use and that we can talk to the councilors about and get direction from the council. Police station improvements. You may remember in the budget for FY19, there was money put in the budget to make improvements. We did a tour downstairs in this building of the area that needs to be improved. There's additional money that we're going to need in order to be able to complete that. Fire and EMS replacement. We're looking at need for a new fire truck. We're looking at spreading that out over the next couple of years or so, and Fire Chief will talk about that during the upcoming review on the CIP and how we think we should approach that. For now, the $650,000 is a number to make sure that we do go forward and we don't forget that this is something that needs to be done in the 5-year CIP. LATC, there's a bus replacement for $50,000, and that's in place for the next 4 years. You can see the radio replacement project. That's the 800 megahertz that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, is that, excuse me.
Go ahead.
That 2.7, that's well over 5 million. I thought the total cost was 5 million, and we already did some of it last year.
No, we did do some of it.
It's going to be 7 million by the time we're done, I guess.
Well, we did do some of it last year. I'll go back and look at what the final figure was.
I mean, this is going to be a huge hit to our
Well,
budget.
the figure was under, I think the figure was under $1 million for FY19. Does that sound right,
Yeah, it's
Phil?
right around a
Yeah,
million.
it was 565,000.
Right. So I think the share for us is 3.2, and I think the share for roughly, and I think the share for Lewiston is the same thing. I actually have sent an email to Ed Barrett to sit down and have a discussion about developing a funding formula for Lewiston, Auburn 911.
Anything come up with that? Because I've...
No, that's, and I don't expect it's going to happen right away, but we've started that process. I think we need a funding formula so that we have a formula that's fair and equitable to both cities, and it's going to take some time to accomplish that. Here's Museum LA. Then with the police department, vehicle replacement, there was 240,000 put in the budget. My recommendation is less than that. I think the 240,000 is for, is that 5 vehicles, Jill? And I think what I'm recommending is money for 4 vehicles. You'll hear from the police chief on that.
What was that, gym? The gym replacement?
We have in the police department, there's an area where people work out. Phil, you want to speak about that? You're more familiar with that than I am.
So the gym equipment came over from the previous building that we were in. It's downstairs in the PD area. Part of the agreement with the union is that part of their savings from their health insurance had gone into account, which helped purchase that, and this is now moving forward with future replacements.
Thank you. Public Works, this won't surprise you. Some big numbers there. It's a challenge to keep up with the roads. And you'll see in what I recommend, what I'm proposing with the CIP, we don't have enough money to accomplish everything that the Public Works Director would like us to do. And I will speak about that next Monday, the following Monday, in terms of CIP needs for FY20. There's a list of trucks, vehicles that we need for Public Works. Again, we have that scheduled out over 5 years. It's a work in progress. Every year we take a look at it, see if we want to make an adjustment or a change. Here's an excavator, Councilor Titus. If we can strike a deal with Auburn Water District, I'm certainly happy to do that, if it makes sense.
About, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe we help them buy a piece of equipment they need that makes theirs more versatile. I'm not sure, but it's worth the conversation.
Right. Trying to remember if that's on the list that I'm recommending for FY20. I don't think it is.
There's another piece of equipment on there too that had to do with the vac truck they use to back out water sewer systems or other drainage systems.
Right.
They're talking about having the catch basin cleaning truck.
Yep.
I mean, the sewer district
Right.
has a machine. I don't know how much it's used or whatever, but I certainly would like to have it looked at, the opportunity.
If we can work together to do something like that, I think that's great. Here's recreation and sports facilities. Again, these numbers for FY20 are not what I'm recommending. These numbers were put in as part of the 5-year CIP. you can see under recreation and sports facilities, the money for the senior community center phase 2. We're talking about a little bit more than that.
That's phase 3, and we've...
At this point.
Do we know what that's all about? Because it's already been allocated 700,000 or something like that. What, do you know what that...
You'll hear me talk about that next week. I mean, we talked about that at the last council meeting. We reviewed that number.
Not that number.
Where we're at. No, that number that's a holding number. As you know, we're now looking at completely finishing out Senior Community Center. And we'll talk about that the next council meeting, give you an update. Portable stage I referred to earlier is the 180,000. Here's education. You had the presentation from the finance director for the school department earlier, with the superintendent. I'm recommending 700,000 on the CIP for education. So these are tough choices. It's not. You'll find as you go through this budget that there's been a lot of work done in terms of getting the budget down to where it is. And again, we have not had a big increase in terms of non-tax revenue on the city side. 280,000. 200 of that is 50% of the increase that Governor Mills has recommended on municipal revenue sharing. So it's very challenging. Thank you.
Council or committee, have any questions for the manager?
You mentioned mezzanine. Mezzanine in what building?
Mezzanine.
Ingersoll.
Ingersoll turf facility? Is that right?
Mezzanine furniture.
So they can actually use the mezzanine?
Yeah.
No, it's a view, yeah.
Looking at my team over there, is that correct?
It's Ingersoll.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
For Ingersoll? Yeah, they're right above the entry
And
ledge.
balcony.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing on this is, as we start thinking about it, you know, this is where, in my opinion, we start looking at what Councilor Titus said. How do we share equipment? How do we utilize it cross-platform? How do we utilize it cross-department? Also, you know, bleachers at Walton, you know, and we're talking about taking on Walton's field for rec. Should we? There's something to be said about plowing it over if we don't need it, or turning into a multi-use, just empty field. We could probably take that money and better allocate it someplace else in the city. And I'm not sure if that's right. I'm just saying it. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of things to think about in that whole picture of how do we best work together on the school, municipal, and quasi-municipal agencies like Auburn Water Department, Auburn Sewer, in order to accomplish some of these cost savings. That's going to give us the biggest competitive advantage in attracting business and people to live in Auburn, as we're seeing other communities with high single-digit, potentially double-digit increases in property tax. If we're holding the line below CPIU, we become very competitive. And that's what we need to do, because we are on the high end, not the highest like everybody thinks, but we're on the high end of the state. We got to bring that down. So thank you very much for that proposal from my end. I will say that, you know, I would enjoy any feedback from the school committee and that thought process of how to best utilize a finite amount of funds.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to know, when are you going to have your recommendations ready, CIP again?
Right.
Next Monday will be part 1.
So that'll be your recommendations. Now, we'll
Right.
have an opportunity to ask for either add or subtract what we want to. And
Absolutely.
hopefully this council will be ready to say yay or nay on some items, or based on what you say. I'm hoping we can we do that in the same night that it's presented, or is it something that has to be done later?
We have 2 CIPs on
Yeah, we have 2 CIP presentations that I'm giving, and then, you know, you won't have to approve the CIP until later on in the process in June. So.
And frankly, I'd like to push that off as late as possible, because I'd like to get the final report.
Well, I'd like to have the discussion going on, you know, as much as possible, you know.
The strategic planning report should come out too. I think that could shed some light into some of those decisions on CIP. Could.
Well, there's already a place mark for that, but
There was.
Well, there's a lot of other things in the CIP
There are also
discussions.
2.5 million over 4.
Yeah, but there's CIP discussions that feed into what we've already proposed.
Right.
You know, so events and so forth, well, that might lend it to the conversation of a stage, so.
Yes, Councilor Titus made a good point, and I believe his discussion, as you reiterated, the water and sewer departments may have an excavator or equipment. Is there a citywide inventory of equipment that's available? Does that exist? You know, not only what the school department has for plow trucks and pickups and that type of thing, but excavators, bulldozers, graders, that type of thing, so that there's a resource for any department within the city to say, gee, I need X. Does someone have it?
We know what we have for equipment.
Right, but
I'm not, maybe Dan and Billy have talked so that they know.
I could
I'm
add,
not sure
Mr.
about
Manager.
Auburn Water and Sewer.
Just quickly, so we are part of Androscoggin Emergency Management, which keeps an inventory of all equipment, including schools' equipment, into a database that's accessible. So if there was an emergency, we know where we could pull any of that equipment. It's rated, its year, all the information is in there. It's accessible through a database for us. So yes, we do have an inventory. It's done every year through emergency management.
It's a point of accessing it.
yeah, access and knowledge of its use.
And again, collaboration and cooperation, and how can I help you, how you can help me, and that kind of thing. Because really, that's a high-ticket item, as you mentioned. You seem to buy them like they're nothing.
Jason?
Yes, Council.
Just going back to the bleachers in Walton Field, we chose to add those bleachers in because we figure that we've got another 5 or 6 years to be using those new bleachers over there. But, you know, hey, let's turn the steel in and see what we can get for the old ones at least, and then go from there.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, you know, it's a bad idea. It's one of those, it was just a good discussion point. So looking at all that stuff and, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle, hey, I'm starting to think that maybe we can use some of that old casework at AMS at our senior center instead of having a line item for cabinets. That could be a stretch, but that's the type of thinking I think we need to have in order to get more for less, all right? So, again, I think we have another week before our CPI meeting, our first one. Love to get, and the final presentation, that was the gross list, and we're gonna get down to the single net or modified gross.
Oh, gross.
Gross net.
Dollars, not gross.
Not like disgusting, but gross versus modified
It is
gross
can be.
versus
I mean,
net.
depends on how you look at
as
it.
disgusting. Yes, you could.
So, yeah, no, the top line, and we'll look at the edited version on Monday, but anytime, any thoughts that the school committee or anybody in the public have on this, please let us know. So
Yeah, and-
definitely thinking about this one.
One last question. Again, you'll probably get to me, you're talking about $10.3 million debt service compared to last year, and why that showed up, and tonight, can I get an answer on that? Is it because you've already decided on your CIP?
You'll have an answer for that next Monday.
Oh, maybe
Yeah.
sooner?
Yeah.
Stay
Yeah,
tuned.
I think we'll provide you some information on that next Monday. I think there'd be no surprises with that, so.
Why it would go up $3 million a year in debt service?
You'll have an answer next Monday, Kelsey.
Holy moly, it's a big secret.
As a taxpayer, are we almost done with the new Auburn Village Center?
We haven't even started yet.
How much money as a taxpayer do we continue to put into it? And what's the end result? What's the return on investment in the new Auburn area? What's our, I mean,
It's a very, very good question. I'm not going to begin to answer that completely.
Right.
But in conversation on the lunch with the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development on Friday of last week in New Auburn, as he's looking at the opportunity zone, which the New Auburn Village Plan is part of, there's a lot of opportunity there. Have we explored what the potential is? We do with regards to the knowledge of how many building sites there could be, square footage, et cetera, zoning. But the opportunities are yet to be fully explored. And that's just not Auburn. That's opportunity zones around the country.
Right.
And bringing that knowledge here. We just don't know yet. It's something better than zero. I sure hope so. But maybe the manager or Michael Jammings has more information on that. But it's a good question.
and actually, I'm from Portland, and Deering High School sits in Deering Center, and there's Longfellow School and Lincoln Junior School, you must know these, and there's Deering Center, and Deering Center always had a pizza joint, a hairdresser, a shoe shop, and that was all they had. Not too long ago, I went through it, and it is fantastic on it, and have you been there recently? Pat's Meats Market, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I would certainly look at something like that if I was sitting in the council's position.
And I would say, I wasn't Portland for about 20 years.
I know you were.
As a county manager in Cumberland County, and Portland changed a lot in the last 20 years.
Absolutely.
It wasn't always like that.
No,
Right.
Deering
Takes-
Center was not like that
Right.
before, and I'm just singling Deering Center out because I was shocked when I went through how great it was.
Need a few field trips, taking a look at what the possibilities are in different parts of the city as well, not just New Auburn, but
But
different
Deering
parts.
alum, so I know what you're talking about.
You know what?
But,
Okay.
Wow.
I mean, I enjoyed a lot of shops when I was going to school there, so I don't know where the new, I've been on Stevens Avenue you're talking about?
I am.
All the shops that are along there? I mean, they've been there, they've always been a lot of shops there.
Not like now, Andy. You need to look at it because it's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's go shopping.
We're trying to stimulate more growth, development. You know, in New Auburn, we have the
Walkability.
amphitheater that we're looking at doing. We're looking at some mixed-use buildings with retail shops. At some point in the future, going to improve that area, transform it in some ways. I think it'll attract more people. I think it's going to be even more of an asset in the future than it is today. But, you know, we don't play the role that the business does. Business really, small business in particular, is what determines the economy, but we can stimulate it. We can help create things.
We have a lot of young people who are willing to bring their small businesses here, and they really want to see this first floor stores and the upstairs being, you know, places to live. But it used to be like that here years ago. You know, this is what we had here before urban renewal took over.
Then let's look at some of our older citizens with large corporations, and as the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development told Peter and I on Friday, there's $4 trillion of pent-up, unspent, unrealized cap gains. That, if you want to spend it and shelter it from cap gains taxes, you spend it in an opportunity zone. And that is an opportunity zone. All we need to do is capture a fraction of a percent of that opportunity zone capital, and it will make a huge difference. So that's what we're going to do. I haven't even told the city manager, but I got an email today from DC. They want to have what we discussed, the opportunity conference, and bring all the federal and business entities together in Auburn in May. So I'm going to send that to you.
Great.
So they want the secretary personally directed to bring everybody together in a conference, so professionals, investors, and so forth can all get together in the New Auburn area and look at revitalizing.
30th, whatever you do.
I don't know about that. That's on the city manager. I just get the email.
Memorial Day.
And it won't be on Memorial Day, I promise. So, good? Okay, I think we're good. This is a first glance pass at this. We'll have more conversation. Thank you all very much. I'm going to adjourn this workshop for March 25th. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.